The operating room is chaos. I've been rushed in for an emergency C-section. The monitors are loudly sounding off. People are rushing around everywhere, and I hear urgent whispers all around me. But in all that noise, there's one sound I desperately need to hear and don't. The cry of my newborn daughter. Elizabeth burst into the world at 29 weeks, weighing just 2 pounds. We would later learn that she had mitochondrial disease, or mito for short, which is a degenerative condition with no cure. Now, this left her blind, intellectually disabled, nonverbal, and very medically fragile. She needed 24-hour care, and I was terrified. In fact, while raising my children, I was afraid all the time. I was afraid that I wouldn't be enough. Now, who here has ever felt that way, especially regarding our children? Although Elizabeth's birth was not the first time I'd experienced fear, it was the most profound moment, and it was a defining moment in my relationship with fear. Because sometimes my life looked like an Instagram post, kids playing in the yard, smiling and laughing, and sometimes it looked like a late-night TV commercial, Elizabeth in an intensive care unit at the Children's Hospital with wires and tubes everywhere. When I was growing up, we didn't actually have enough of literally anything. So I came by my fear mindset, honestly. But when Elizabeth was born, that fear was amplified in ways that I never expected. I started out from behind, caught up in thinking, I'm never going to be able to do this. And in the disability community, this fear, we know it as scarcity mindset, is everywhere, whether you are the disabled individual or you're caring for someone who is disabled. Now, let me be clear, there is scarcity in our community. This isn't a lie that we tell ourselves. There aren't enough experienced doctors, enough dollars, enough programs, enough caregivers. But we can't live in that fear. We have to find ways to move forward. Why? Well, here is what fear does to us. Fear paralyzes us. When we're consumed by fear, we become stuck. Fear triggers our fight or flight response. But when that threat is ongoing or abstract, like it was when my kids were growing up, we often freeze instead. And this paralysis prevents us from taking the actions that might actually improve our situation. There's brutal competition for services, and I'll never forget searching for the best physical, occupational, and speech therapists for Elizabeth. And many didn't take our insurance because they didn't have to. Many had long wait lists, required long trips to get to their offices, and were preferential about who they would work with. I got so frustrated. I became that mom that nobody wanted to deal with. And then I gave up for quite some time and was so overwhelmed that I couldn't get anything done. There's also an opportunity cost to fear. Time spent in fearful inaction is time not spent building, creating, problem solving, and most importantly, adapting. Life continues moving whether we participate or not. And staying frozen means missing chances for growth and positive change. Now, finally, I began to problem solve and advocate with the insurance companies, negotiate and barter for services, and take on key roles in the community, which helped lift us up. Third, fear is a self-fulfilling prophecy, and living in constant fear often brings about the very outcomes that we're trying to avoid. Fear clouds our judgment, leads to poor decisions, and can create the conditions for failure through avoidance and inaction. Now, I was in a financial mess. Despite being a professional attorney, I couldn't work enough due to caregiving, and I couldn't afford all the things that Elizabeth needed. I took the kids to Disney instead of saving for a rainy day because I couldn't see past tomorrow. But then our wheelchair van got repossessed. The poor person who had that job that day, I actually prayed for them. And I got a foreclosure notice on our accessible home. I had to file for bankruptcy to protect our ability to continue to live there. And Elizabeth was in hospice at the time. I had my head in the sand, and I wasn't taking care of important things. And I'm ashamed to this day to still talk about this. Now, lastly, and most importantly, fear steals our hope. Humans need hope and forward momentum for mental health. We are wired to be goal-oriented and future-focused. I know that describes me. Without that sense of progress or possibility, we experience despair, depression, and learned helplessness. Now, fortunately for me, Elizabeth was my best teacher. Although she was profoundly disabled, she was incredibly powerful. She was honestly the love of my life. We spent countless hours together because she required so much care. And she taught me about life in ways that weren't superficial, real transformative lessons about the difference between living in fear and living with hope, between living with a scarcity mindset and an abundance mindset. She even went to her prom at the famous Perkins School for the Blind. 2 boys had asked her. I was very afraid to let her go. I'm sure you're not surprised to hear that, because she was in hospice at the time and her body was just not working anymore. What if something happened to her when I wasn't there? But thank goodness her teacher, Jody, and her nurses convinced me to let her go and have that experience. That was June 2013. On November 18th, 2013, my worst fear came true, and my heart broke forever when Elizabeth died at 17. And here's the truth that sits with me every day. Elizabeth lived her entire 17 years in a world that saw her as an exception, not an expectation. She experienced some moments of inclusion, yes, but they were always the result of someone going out of their way, someone making a special effort, usually me. She never simply belonged, but she never stopped trying. She always had hope. Even in death, Elizabeth was still teaching me. And here's what I learned. Her life carried weight and meaning. Her presence mattered. And I needed to honor that by not living in fear and by changing the world so no other Elizabeth has to wait for belonging. Now, here's what you can do so fear doesn't steal your hope. First, find your community. Some days you won't feel strong enough to advocate for yourself and stand on your own 2 feet, but your community can step in, just like the people here. Increase your personal connections, because sometimes just telling your story, like I'm doing here today, has a profound impact on someone else. Focus on your individual plans that will help you concentrate on abundance instead of scarcity. For me, I never met a checklist I didn't love. It's like wrapping yourself up in a warm, cozy blanket. Also, get educated, find reliable resources, and join groups. Build awareness, and if you can, extend yourself beyond your own life. It's been 12 years since Elizabeth passed. My advocacy in my practice has exploded, along with opportunities to impact people like being on stage here today. Because Elizabeth taught me the most important lesson. We are stronger together when we live our lives in hope, not fear. Elizabeth lived 17 years and never once walked into a room where she automatically belonged. She died waiting for that world. But maybe, just maybe, the next Elizabeth won't. What if the next Elizabeth, being born at this very moment, won't spend her entire life fighting for basic belonging? The key isn't eliminating fear. That's impossible. But learning to act despite it. Because movement creates momentum, and momentum builds confidence, which gradually displaces your fear with purpose. Just weeks before Elizabeth died, despite constant pain and discomfort in a body that was dying, her music teacher captured her vocalizing, singing. And I treasure that recording because she was still singing in the end. And it reminds me that I need to live fully today with hope and an abundance mindset, creating the world Elizabeth never got to experience, where belonging isn't something we fight for, but something every person can expect. Will you join me? Thank you.